everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Bottom Line. I'm your host, Lauren Khalil. Our show is brought to you by the U.S. Army Warrior Fitness Team, which provides awareness of Army opportunities while serving. Team members are active duty soldiers that compete in CrossFit, strong man, strong woman competitions, both nationally and internationally. To learn more, make sure you check out the link in our description. On today's episode, I'm here with Brian Friend to discuss the recent news of CrossFit Games athlete Amanda Barnhart announcing that she's leaving CompTrain. Since her coach, Ben Bergeron, has started coaching, he's been taking on several high-level athletes like Matt Frazier, Brooke Wells, Katrin David's daughter, Cole Sager, just to name a few. But recently, Wells, David's daughter, Sam Quant, and now Barnhart have left. Brian, what do you think we're seeing with this trend over at CompTrain?
It's absent of being in those conversations. There's definitely a few different things that could be going on. And I would kind of lean towards one of two things. And the first is that the athletes that are moving there are not getting what they want from the coaching. And the second would be that the athletes that are moving there have realized that for their family or personal reasons, they want to move back to where they came from. And I think that there's a high likelihood in many of these cases that the second component of that is a factor, if not a significant factor, or the main factor. Like you mentioned, Ben Bergeron has a tremendous pedigree of coaching and in various time domains. He only coached Fraser for a small period of time relative to Katrin David's daughter. He's had Cole Sager for a while, and he's had some of these for smaller amounts of time. But he's shown the ability to elevate athletes from where they are to where they can be, even if it's not that much of an improvement in some cases, and in some cases it is a really good move for them. Some of those athletes had some extenuating circumstances. The 2021 season in general was a huge mystery for Samuel Quant for most of us. We were expecting him to come to semifinals and be extremely relevant in a qualifying position, and he wasn't. And we find out later about this illness that he's been battling for a long time. And we haven't learned really too much more about that. But he ultimately made a decision to move home. And I, would venture to say that there's a good chance that it has to do with health and happiness and being with his family. I mean, he had an amazing training environment there with his brothers and some friends for a long time before doing that. And additionally, he's still being coached by Harry Pally, who I think is someone we have to talk about in this equation.
Okay, so how does he play a factor in this equation?
Harry's an interesting figure in the CrossFit world. Not only has CompTrain coached some incredible athletes at the elite level, they also were the first and biggest online platform that people were, or the first really big online platform that people were using. Now we have several of those, and I'm talking about tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands or millions of users that are following these programs in some regards. And the origins of those big things were CompTrain. And I think Harry was heavily involved in the programming for the masses as well as for the elite. And my kind of assumption has always been that him and Ben worked really well together. Learned a lot from each other, maybe had some strengths and weaknesses that they leaned on when in programming. And I know that to be true in some other training camps also. You have a weightlifting specialist or an aerobic specialist or whatever it is. And sometimes it's a little bit more nuanced than that also. So I think, when Harry and Ben ended up going their own ways for whatever reason that was, it's a bit of a new learning process for both of them because they've been doing it together for so long. And you can't count out the fact that some of those athletes might have gone there knowing that they were both there. And then when they weren't there anymore, it wasn't necessarily the environment they committed to going to.
And you talk about environment, and you even talk about Sam Quant. We know that he was dealing with, I can't remember if it was allergies or something with the location that was causing flare-ups for him. Amanda had said in her post that she was leaving because her and her husband want to be closer to home, closer to family in Ohio. How much does environment and living in a specific location do you think play into the factor when athletes are deciding where they want to move and whether they want to go to a training camp in general?
I mean, I would have to consider it to be extremely significant. So not just from a climate perspective, but you just can get comfortable in a gym, can comfortable with a group of people or a coaching process. And that process can be remote or it can be in person. And when you change up not just one of those things, but all of those things all at once, some people are kind of like chameleons and they can just go wherever and fit in, and it's pretty natural for them. But there's others that become creatures of habit. And once you develop a routine that's working pretty well, I mean, we're talking about athletes like Amanda Barnard who have made consecutive top 10 finishes at the CrossFit Games and then joined up with CompTrain looking to make that next push up. But that's a really hard push to make. It's the higher up you go on that leaderboard, the less margin for there is and the harder it is to climb. So she might have taken that gamble. Yeah, we're going to give up our life in home that we're comfortable with. Go take a risk over there because we want to pursue that dream. But it's pretty likely or possible, I would say, that in a family situation like that, they might have said, you know what, let's give it 2 years. That's a good enough sample size. Let's see where we're at, and we'll reevaluate then. And whether it's for personal reasons or professional reasons, they made a decision to go back home. And that's not that surprising to me, because that's what people do a lot of times. They go back home.
When we look at the landscape, there are so many training camps. It seems like new ones are popping up left and right. They're getting more competitive, more high level athletes are going to them. We also see a bit of swapping, but it seems like we're not really seeing what's happening at CompTrain at other training camps with the amount of high level athletes leaving after 2 or 3 years. So why specifically do you think this is happening at CompTrain? Do you think it was like the mix of coaching there or the environment, or is there like another variable that's in the mix?
I don't know. I mean, I can, I guess it's first of all, it's one of the most high profile ones. So it's going to have the most scrutiny surrounding it. And there's
Mhm.
such high profile athletes there that you're often going to hear about it. Like, to me, it was a big deal, for example, when Adam Klink left Krypton. Adam Klink had been Ben Smith's training partner for a long time, but he never made a name for himself in the sport the way that all these athletes at CompTrain was. So it was talked about, but it wasn't scrutinized as heavily. And it was just once. Um, but his brother Alec also left. So I was just starting to think about some of these other camps. Like, people come and go over time. This thing that you're asking about, though, leads more to the first thing that I said, is that that's what raises eyebrows and raises questions about if the training environment that people are being sold when they move there is what they feel like they're being delivered upon while they're there. I've never been to CrossFit New England or any other training camps or anything like that, but I kind of struggle to believe that's the case. Ben's not only a very experienced coach, he has very experienced coaches at his gym. And whether you're a fan of it or not, it's a very regimented organization there where they're like really serious about continuing the education of their coaches. And he's constantly pushing his coaches to go through the proper means and channels of getting the level 1, 2, 3, expanding into some of the specialty domains that are interesting to you, having coaches meetings to talk about that, having consistent performance review processes at their gym. He really, really has always valued and established that level of professionalism. So I know that people want to say that, and I can understand why with the pattern. I just have a hard time believing that to be the case.
Well, and I wonder because, like we've been saying, Ben has such a great pedigree. He is always at these competitions. You see him with the athletes. You see, like the relationship he has with them and how close he is. It just makes us wonder what is happening at CompTrain.
Yeah, I say that Ben's like the in the trenches with you type of coach. He
Absolutely.
goes to battle with you. He'll work out with them. Sometimes he's there watching them almost every day when they train, and he schedules the rest of his day and responsibilities to make sure that that's an important component of it. He never misses competitions. He's in the warm up area with them. He's helping with the body work. He's doing whatever's needed to make sure his athletes are ready to go on game day. He's proven to me that he has the capacity to manage athletes through a season and a career, to understand the landscape of the CrossFit Games, even as it continues to change. Over the last several years, he's found the ways to get it done. I've often, at times I've been critical of some of him or his athletes, but I've always acknowledged the fact that they've done it within the game and the rules that were established. And that's what, he was great at. He was looking at the landscape every single year, whatever it was, and maximizing the opportunities for his athletes. Maybe it's gotten harder to do that, and so his results aren't as good, but that does not mean that they're not still good.
So, Brian, what's your bottom line?
My bottom line is probably that we're making more of a deal out of it than needs to be done. It's hard in any industry to stay at the top for a really long time, and there's tons of different reasons why. So whether you're an athlete or a training camp, like you said, there's new ones coming. There's new opportunities out there, and athletes are always curious and looking for the next edge. There'll be others who come to train at CompTrain with Ben if he continues to offer that service going forward, and they will come and go as well. And you never know. It might be someone like a young Emma Gardner who comes up through their system that ends up being the next mainstay CompTrain athlete. So maybe it's a bit of a valley for them, and maybe they are bummed about losing some of these athletes. But I don't think that it's a setback that needs to be scrutinized or said anything negatively about CompTrain.
All right, Brian, thanks for having the conversation. We'll see you next time.
Okay.